Welcome to my new series on how to crochet. This is for people who have never done any yarn crafts before. If you already know how to knit, you probably don't need this video, although I do recommend maybe watching it once anyway, just in case, because there are some minor differences for buying yarn for crochet. Today we are going to be going to a big box store to get our yarn. I highly recommend that you check out your local yarn shop. However, the yarn there is generally more expensive, and the way that we're starting off crocheting, we're not actually going to make anything right off the bat. We're going to practice a couple of stitches first. So getting a cheaper acrylic yarn that you can just keep ripping back and using over again, and it doesn't matter so much, it's not as precious to use, is a better way to start, in my opinion. However, if you don't have a big box store, go to the local yarn shop and see if they can help you out. The other issue with local yarn shops is they're not always super crochet friendly. They have gotten way better in the last 10-15 years, I would say, but they don't always carry the supplies that we need to crochet, and they don't always have an expert on hand. But it's definitely worth going in and checking. If they don't have what you need, a lot of places will be happy to find it for you. But for now, let's just go to Michael's. Once you get into the store, you'll need to find the yarn department. Now, I've worked at many different Michael's stores, I think 5 or 6 different ones in Ontario and Alberta. And the yarn department has always been in the back corner, either left or right. In this store here, this is the Deerfoot Meadows location in Calgary, Alberta. The yarn department is located at the back right corner. So let's head that way. So here we are in the yarn department. You can see there's some yarn out here in the main aisle. This is generally the new yarn. But we're going to go into the main yarn aisles to pick our yarn today. Right here we've got some Bernat Super Value. And we'll look at the ball band. And you see this little cartoon ball of yarn that's got the number 4 in it. That's what we're looking for. That means it's worsted weight. Any ball of yarn with that on it will do. Okay, let's see what else this store has. You can see this Bernat Super Value comes in a lot of different colors. You'll want to pick a medium color, maybe not too much darker than this royal blue. If you want a multicolored yarn, that's fine too. Those can be pretty fun to work with. This one's Craft Smart, but it's a 4 as well, so that'll work. Let's go down here, some more of the Craft Smart. At the end here, it looks like bigger balls of the same yarn. Craft Smart Value, sure. That's also a 4. That'll do just fine. Let's see what's on the back wall here. Got Bernat Softy Chunky. This one's okay to work with, but it is thicker. You can see here it's a 6. That means it's a thicker yarn. So you might want to work with that later. It would work well on a knitting loom that you can buy at Michael's, but let's start with something thinner for crochet. What's this? Heartland from Lion Brand. There's our little cartoon ball of yarn. It's a 4. It'll work just fine. You can see here the ball band information. All right, what's this? This one's also a 4. But if you look at it, it's really fluffy and kind of looks like it's going to untwist itself. I wouldn't recommend that as a first yarn to use. But right next to it, we've got some Red Heart Soft. It's a 4. It'll work just fine. I actually use this yarn maybe the second most of all the yarns that I use. It is suggesting a bigger hook than the knitting needle, so that's good. Moving down. Oh, we come to Karen Simply Soft. This is currently my favorite yarn to use. It's 4. I use a 5.5 millimeter hook with this. You might want to use a 6 to start, just to be sure. You can see that the hook information on it is wrong because it is the same as the knitting needle, and that's how we can tell. Now right next to this is the Loops and Threads Soft and Shiny. And generally I like Loops and Threads yarn, but this yarn is terrible. Don't get this. It's it pills. You'll learn more about that later as you learn how to crochet. So going up the yarn aisle here, this yarn here is called Wool Like, and it's a 1. It's a quite thin yarn. You could use it to make socks, that sort of thing. Very thin. So we don't want that today. Moving down the line here, they're a little low on the Loops and Threads Charisma. I really like this yarn too, but look at that, it's a 5. That's too big for what we want today. Also, and a kind of funny thing here, it's suggesting a 9mm needle and an 8mm hook, which is ridiculous. Just use a 9mm hook for this. I think it's the knitting needles that are wrong. Moving on. We've got some baby yarns on this side, some Caron cakes. Some of these would probably work. Here we have the Loops and Threads Impeccable. Again, Loops and Threads is a Michaels brand. You should find this at every Michaels store, but it's a 4. It's got the wrong hook information. Use a bigger hook. I use a 6 or a 6.5 on this yarn. It's a bit thicker than the other 4s that we looked at. Okay, let's head to the notions aisle. This is where we will pick up our crochet hook. So we see all the knitting needles here, moving down, and there's the crochet hooks. So you can buy them individually. I recommend you get a 5.5mm hook or a 6mm hook or a 6.5mm hook. If you can get all 3, that would be perfect. If you don't get 1, get the 6mm. If you can get 2, add the 6.5, and if you can get 3, add the 5.5. They also sell the hooks in groups like this. It can be a savings because you can use a coupon to get all 3 hooks, but you see it's not quite the right sizes that we want. But your store might have different options. Now we have these hooks down here. These are slightly different than the ones up there. These ones have a pointier hook and it's shaped slightly different. Whereas you can see these ones have more of a rounded hook to it. I recommend you start with the rounded hook option because the pointy one can split your yarn if you're not used to using it. And yeah, if you find you're not having luck with the hook you have, go get the other kind and see if that works better. All right, so the last thing we need now is a darning needle. This is for weaving in ends. So in the same aisle, you want to spot these down here. There's a few different options. You can get metal ones like this. You want a nice dull point and an eye that's big enough to fit the yarn through. I like the plastic ones, but this one, I feel like the eye is a little too big on these plastic ones, so I'd probably get this one here. This one would handle a larger, like a thicker yarn. And that's all you need. Head up to the cash register and then join me in the next video to find out what to do with all these things you just bought. Thanks for watching.